So in this video, what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about how to keep your arms straight and release the golf club correctly. And the reason why is because I've got a couple of students that recently been asking questions about this sort of subject area. So I thought if I created a video in a bit like a step-by-step fashion that would sort of help you understand how you guys can do it as well. So the first thing that I'd always encourage is to just understand rotation. Okay, so I would just kind of concentrate on letting the upper part of your lead leg, let your pelvis region, your lower part region and your chest just sort of move quite literally towards the target. So if you're my target, you can see the way that I move the upper part of my leg, pelvis and chest towards facing towards you. Okay, because basically what happens in the golf swing is if you don't rotate, your arms can't move freely to the side of your body and they'll start to bend. So that would be the first thing that you need to do. Now, when you're working on this, what you also want to just make sure that you're doing is that you're retaining hip depth. Okay, so you place an object behind you. I'm just going to draw a line on the screen, and as I'm sort of going to go and rotate towards you, you can see the way that I'm allowing my lead hip to move back behind into that object that I would use. This basically is going to give us, like I say, hip depth. Now, what hip depth does, this motion here, is it kind of, should we say, tilts the pelvis, which tilts the shoulders, which basically means it gives you the ability to rotate while simultaneously staying over the ball. If you're somebody who kind of moves more this way, then that's when you're going to be more prone to sort of theoretically standing up. So that would be the first way I'd go about it. Get used to those drills. If I'm giving somebody a golf lesson, I'd be spending a little bit of time just giving them a bit of time just to work on these sort of feelings, because it amazes golfers that they'll straighten the leg without realizing it, and then you get them to keep it a little softer and turn, and they won't turn enough. So there's enough to sort of think about in that type of exercise, but you could do that for a little while and then you get quite accustomed to it. Now, what we need to talk about though, as we come into the topic of release, because obviously that's just rotation, is I'm going to put this alignment stick here through the front part of my belt loops, and I'm going to place the other one across my shoulder line. Now, what could happen, you see, is that I could theoretically rotate whilst retaining hip depth, but also see the way I'm allowing my head to move, like so. Now, the problem is now you can see my sort of shoulders. So if I sort of paused in this position, see the way that my shoulders are parallel towards my hip line. Now, we don't want that. What we want to do is we want to work on the feeling of, moving into your line, or the box as I referenced there, because it's a training aid I'll often use, and just trying to keep my head still. Now, what you can see is when you keep your head still, this kind of induces an element of separation. That basically again means not this, this. Now, when you start to create more of a separation, what you can see is the way that my left shoulder starts to go up, okay, as opposed to if I let my head move again, it goes more around. Now, the reason why this is significant is because what needs to happen with the golf club when it comes to the idea of releasing it is that you would sort of, get your right arm into, or your trail arm into a position where it's, it's not sort of too close. And then as you start to come down, the arm would start to straighten. But from sort of pre-impact here, the handle of the club needs to go up. And as the handle of the club goes up, the club can drop down. Now, what you don't want to do is sort of chase it this way. You want to make sure it's more this way. So that will happen, you see, this release in terms of how the handle's moving at the bottom part of the swing relative to you moving correctly with having this ability to rotate your body whilst having this ability to keep your head still. That will help the shoulder go up behind you, which will theoretically help the handle go up, which will help the club go down, which will help you start to get that feeling of whipping the club through. And that will sort of, that's the difference between sort of moving like this, where my head's followed the direction and my arms are bent, as opposed to the concept where my head sort of stays much stiller and I can obviously release my arms through. So that would kind of help. Now, a good little drill that you can do to experiment this is at home, get yourself against the wall or close to the wall and put your arms together dead straight in a prayer position. And all I want you to do is you're just going to try and advance your arms whilst keeping them straight as high up the wall as you possibly can. And again, what you'll notice is if you move like this, where you move more over the leg, you'll sort of notice the way you can't elevate your arms up. If you kind of keep your head back and then you allow your body to rotate, again, maybe flare the foot to make life easier, you'll actually be surprised how high you can elevate your arms up. This again is the form of the extension. And that's kind of what we're looking for. Now, the last piece to this is, should we say, the rotation of the arm. Now again, I'm sort of putting this video together for a few students that I know, but also the topic, the common amateur problems that I tend to see. There are differences depending on how you hold the club, depending on your arm position at address will all define exactly how your arms look post impact. But hopefully you'll agree that if we can kind of get the feeling of the arms working straight would be very beneficial as opposed to more this way. So that's the process you'd go through. You would work on your rotation. You would then work on the head staying still. That should change the feeling and the perspective of what your shoulders are doing. You could then advance that and start practicing with your arms working straight, because again, if you're moving incorrectly, they won't be able to travel very high. And then, like I say, the last one is you just want to start to incorporate some forearm rotation. How much? Well, you've got two thoughts. One, you can either do it so that the butt end of the golf club points down towards your target line, would be a fine indication. Or the second way of doing it would just be depending on what the ball flight's doing. If you're hitting the golf ball pretty straight, then you could maybe argue that your arms are rotating a necessary amount to keep the face square. But the point is really, is that that's how we're going to do it. That's how you're going to have this ability to sort of keep those arms straight, as I'm sort of demonstrating here, is having that understanding of rotating, similar to where I am in this position, whilst quite simply kind of keeping your head still and just sort of allowing it to feel like it's more of an upward motion, particularly in this hitting zone, and not like a very much a downward one. So that's how you would do it. That's how that process works. With reference to practicing it, well, yeah, that's what you need to work on. So I would suggest that you need to become competent, obviously, at the drills first. So this would be a little tip to a lot of my students that are probably maybe still watching the video at this point. You need the drills that I've talked about in this video, you need to do, and you need to do them very competently. I've noticed that students that are doing drills competently are progressing. Once you can do the drill competently, that drill will give you the correct feeling that you can then experiment with in practice. To take this to the range, you just have to have a go. Try and get the feeling, make a few practice swings, trying to get this feeling of your arms staying straight and moving more up, and then just sort of play around with it. Maybe video it, see what it's looking like. But that's the kind of thing that you're looking for. Don't underestimate the drills. Hopefully the explanation helps as well, build a bit of understanding, but it's certainly the drills that you need to be doing and experiencing and doing them well to make a big difference. See you soon.